What's up guys, it's Lord Botha here for another video, and it's been about a week since Marvel's Thunderbolts came out, or as some people are knowing now, the new Avengers, and we're going to get into that in just a few minutes. And there are two questions on everybody's mind a week in. The first is, how is the film actually performing and being received? The second question is it actually good? We're going to answer the first question, and then later in the video, I did see Thunderbolts, and I'll give my brief review of it, and there'll be some spoilers in there, so if you don't want any spoilers for the film, don't check into that portion. But as the first question goes, how is the film actually performing? Well, as you can see here from Box Office Mojo, Thunderbolts did a $74 million domestic opening, which is lower than Captain America Brave New Stunning Black Falcon. But also Thunderbolts had quite a lot lower budget than that film, and probably a generally lower cost, as I don't think it went through as many reshots as that movie. I mean, Brave New World went through like 2 complete refilmings. That movie had to break $1 billion just to break even. This film, in terms of its budget and marketing costs, it needs to do about $600 million to break even. I do think it actually has a shot at that, and at this point, that's really what Marvel movies are shooting for. As we know, most Marvel movies since Endgame have struggled to just break even. Even things that were hailed as great successes of the later phases of Marvel, things like Doctor Strange Mom, ended up barely breaking even, maybe not even that, after all the tax information came out and we got to learn the real numbers about the budget. I mean, some would say the biggest success of Marvel in these later phases was Guardians 3. And that movie essentially did break even, maybe make a little bit of profit. But even then, breaking even on these films is pretty much the goal now. The budgets are just way too massive. Not every Marvel film can do endgame numbers and make that level of profit for a company. The budgets are just not justified anymore. And that is a problem for Disney and Marvel in total. But as the total numbers stand, you can see it here, $165.5 million worldwide. Again, it's decent. It stands a chance to make its money back if you have a pretty good hold. And I do think this movie might get a pretty good hold. There's a decent amount of hype and good word of mouth around it, and a lot of negative criticism about this movie seems to be coming from the typical people who just do not like Marvel in its current state. And while they're justified to hold that opinion, I feel like it's too broadly being put on this film. And I think audiences who have seen this film tend to agree. Now, we have seen positive numbers for most Marvel films, even the really bad ones, on sites like Rotten Tomatoes, right? But it's a little difficult to ignore a 94% audience score. That seems a little more than just cooking the books, or NPCs just going out and spamming likes of the movie. But 94% audience, 87% critics, and when you go to top critics, it's even higher, 89%, and all audience score, which is double the amount of ratings, from 5,000 to 10,000 ratings on this movie, the score is still the same, 94. Even when you go to alternative critic sites, right? People who are part of what's known as the Fellowship on YouTube, or as the political left like to call them in media, the alt-right pipeline. Even on the website that they promote and they use, and they think is better than Rotten Tomatoes, or at least an alternative, critic list, even then the audience score stands at a 60%. So the people that you think would be biased against this film just to hate it, because they don't like the current state of Marvel and the general product that they've been putting out, even they are over 50% on this movie. Then when you go to Metacritic, it seems to split the difference on those two wildly different scores. It's sitting at a 68. So when people are asking, how is the movie actually performing? Is it doing well financially? Is it being well received? My response is, it's a little too early to tell. I think the second week numbers are really going to tell the trajectory of this film. If they hold really well, I think this film might actually end up doing pretty well, at least breaking even, which again is pretty much the goal for every Marvel movie now. If it's not, well then, yeah, this thing's going to be a failure. Despite the fact that the people who have seen it seem to have really liked it in terms of audience scores and critic reviews, even amongst those who are kind of predisposed to not like it. But that doesn't mean that people who have checked out of Marvel are going to come back. Entertainment is a service industry, and all service industries depend on normies, non-regulars. Hardcore fans and regulars are going to show up to your business no matter what. They like any product you put out. They like what you've been giving them, but they're not going to keep the lights on. They're not going to pay all your bills. They're not going to give you money that you need to live your life. You need the normies, the common people, the non-regulars to be able to do that. And if they've checked out of your product, well, getting them back in the door, even if Thunderbolts was a massive success and really great, that film alone, I don't even think it could do that. You'd have to rack up win after win after win. And even though, and this gets into the review portion a little bit, I think Thunderbolts was actually a very good movie, you have to look at the fact that Fantastic Four is right after this. And Fantastic Four does not look like it's going to be a good movie. But as for the review part of this video, like I said, I saw Thunderbolts. I actually thought it was a really good movie. I thought that Thunderbolts was the first time in a very long time the writers over at Marvel, or whoever was writing this film, because I know it's pretty much a hot potato of who's writing what, whenever, when. And they're pretty much readapting the script and rewriting the script as they go through movies. But somehow, they seem to have made a pretty cohesive story through that, at least this time. Because it felt like it was the first time in a very long time that they actually had a direction they wanted to go with the characters and story, and they had something they wanted to say. Which I know a lot of people would be like, oh, well, agenda. Just make superhero movies. You don't have to have some kind of message in it. Yeah, but superheroes as a forum have always been about moral messaging of some kind. Some kind of life lesson, at least. I mean, with great power comes great responsibility. I mean, classic Spider-Man. It's something that we can all relate to as well. It's not politics or social or culture based. It's just morals and philosophy. And I think this was the first time in a very long time they actually did that well and gave a fairly good moral and humanist motif to the movie. And yes, it was about depression and mental illness. But if you haven't noticed, there's a lot of depression and mental illness in the world right now. There's a lot of people out there feeling lonely and like nobody cares about them. There's a reason why people liked the first Joker movie and found it very relatable to them. And this is where some of the spoilers come in. So again, if you don't want spoilers, don't listen to any of this. But to anybody who says that they beat the bad guy by giving Sentry a therapy session hug, well, you know what? Maybe superheroes, and especially Marvel superheroes, that ain't for you. Because not all superhero stories are about there is a bad guy, and to defeat the bad guy, good guy must become stronger so he can punch out the bad guy. Sometimes superhero stories, especially in Marvel and DC even, heroes don't primarily rely on their physical strength or even their wit in some way to defeat their enemy. Sometimes it takes some kind of power from within. And in this case, it was the power to show this broken, mentally ill man that the falsehood that he believed about himself was not real. The simple moral message of the movie is sometimes all you gotta do to be a hero and save the day is just be there for somebody. Be there for somebody who's in need. I think that's a pretty easy, common moral message that we can all rally around. But people have become so jaded against Marvel that a lot of content creators, have immediately gone with, oh, they defeated the bad guy with a therapy session hug. Nah, expand your mind a little bit. And if you don't like that, then go watch Dragon Ball. Because if you want a series or movies or manga That's all about there are bad guys, good guy has to become stronger in some way to be able to physically defeat the bad guy, then does that. Like that's all Dragon Ball. That's all that Dragon Ball is. And don't get me wrong, Dragon Ball is great. I love it. And there are definitely life lessons that are woven into that story as well. But it's not like this. It's not like Marvel or DC that do these kinds of stories and have done these kinds of stories for a very long time. In terms of the rest of the movie, I thought it was done fairly well. There were definitely action sequences, so anybody who says this is boring because there aren't any action sequences, nah, they're there. They do get rid of an annoying character that everybody hated, or at least hated that iteration of. And yes, we're all talking about Taskmaster. Everybody knows it's Taskmaster. The fake, stupid female Taskmaster that nobody wanted from the terrible, awful movie that was Black Widow. Which still in my mind is the worst Marvel movie ever made. Characters, plot, CGI, everything. Just terrible. But I think they did a really good job, speaking of characters, in developing characters, making them more well-rounded, making them feel like actual people. For as much as I actually liked the character of John Walker in that terrible Falcon and the Winter Soldier series, he was about the only thing I liked in that series, they do a good job of making him fairly well-rounded in this show as well, and giving him more of a personality than the asshole soldier type who wants to complete the mission. David Harbour's Red Guardian, they did an excellent job, making him a more well-rounded character and honestly, making him the heart of this group. Sort of the rallying cry that wants them to all be a super team, and is kind of the eternal optimist who wants the best possible outcome for everybody and seems to care a lot for a lot of people almost instantly. And it doesn't feel forced. It feels like just a general part of his personality. It's well woven. And yes, they were lying to you. Bucky Barnes, while they might set him up as the leader of the team in future stories, and while he does have a fairly prominent part in this movie, Marvel was lying to you. He's not the leader of this team. The leader of this team, and the character who takes front and center the most, is Yelena. Though, to be quite honest, I didn't really mind that, because Florence Pugh does a really good acting job. She shows a lot of heart, is very relatable, and uses her ability to understand people and tap into a more nurturing side of herself, a side that cares about somebody, to help them and eventually defeat the bad guy. Part of what's interesting about this plot, which is that she makes the quip that none of them fly, and that all of them on this team just punch and shoot things. But in the end, they don't punch or shoot anything to actually win. It's actually doing the opposite of that allows them to defeat the darkness, which is the void. As far as the new Avengers stuff is concerned, if you don't know or don't plan on seeing the film, at the end the team we know as the Thunderbolts, who are wittily named after Yelena's childhood soccer team, which has absolutely nothing to do with actual Marvel canon for the actual Thunderbolts, are rebranded immediately as the new Avengers, because Valentina De Fontaine needs a way out quickly from going to prison and being captured by our team of anti-heroes, and the way she does that is to turn them into heroes. Turn her clandestine group of villains into front-facing heroes. Which I think is another way that Marvel is trying to deal with the question of who are the Avengers now? Because all of the Avengers from the original Avengers are pretty much gone. So it's the way Feige is trying to be like, oh, you want some Avengers? Okay, here's your Avengers. These are your new official Avengers. I did like at the end how they showed kind of the mixed reception they were getting in the press. And I also think that if this movie had been made almost directly after Endgame, or very early on in the Marvel phases, and they abandoned the whole meta plot of Kang the Conqueror and all that stuff, and gone with this more grounded idea of the Thunderbolts becoming the new Avengers, they could have actually had a good idea there. Something to work with. Unfortunately, they decide to do it at pretty much the end of everything, right before they're about to hit the giant reset button on the universe. So we're never going to actually get this good idea that Marvel may have had flushed out into something tangible. But yeah, thought it was a really good movie. I had a few nitpicks here and there. I think some of the flashback sequences were a bit weird and jarring. I think some of the humor was a little bit cringe and fell flat, though a lot of it was funny, like actually funny. But yeah, overall, generally liked the movie. I think that this, in terms of an actual movie project, was the most successful I've seen from Marvel in a very long time, especially since Endgame. It's the one I've most liked and cared about since then, and actually want to see perform well. Unfortunately, I'm not quite sure if it will actually do that. Again, this second week is really going to be the make or break week for it, I think. But those are just my thoughts on all this. If you have your own thoughts, go ahead and leave them in the comments. If you liked this video, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like this video, appreciate you watching all of it, and we'll talk to you again later.